You must be wondering what I'm going to talk about today. And with all these bushy, hairy trees, I'm going to talk about bonsai tools. You know the expression, a bad workman or the bad carpenter always blames his tools. And I don't think it would be true about bonsai, because if you make bad bonsai, I don't think you can blame your bonsai tools. You've got to blame yourself. But tools certainly help. There's no doubt that tools help. Most of you would know that from my videos. I'm very fond of the Felco secateurs, but I still do use bonsai tools quite a lot. And I'm going to do a special YouTube video about bonsai tools because last year we managed to find a Chinese manufacturer that produces most of the bonsai tools for the entire world. And they have now produced special branded tools for us, Heron's Bonsai Tools, and I'm going to take you through each of them. So look at this, all these tools. Believe it or not, all these tools are specially made for us. I'm going to show you in detail what they are, and even some of them are packaged with my picture on it and the instructions at the back. So these are Chinese tools, but as I always tell people, what isn't made in China these days? Virtually everything nowadays is made in China. Even your iPhone, the iPhone that I'm filming with, is made in China. So the best things, I reckon, are made in China. I'm not saying it because I'm of Chinese ethnicity. I'm not really Chinese. I grew up in India and I've lived here 52 years. But just to say that bonsai tools now, the best ones are all made in China. And I was told back in the early 2000, I think 2005 or 2006, when I was going to Japan, a Japanese grower told me that a lot of the Japanese bonsai tools were also made in China. So there you go. So having said that, I'm going to do not just a plug for myself about our own tools, I'm going to explain to you what all these different tools are used for. So I've got a basket of one of every tool that we have got made specially for us. Some are duplicated because there's a difference between the stainless steel tools and the black steel tools or the carbon steel tools, but they're all the same design. Some are slightly cheaper than others. So there are some tools that we haven't had commissioned, but you will still find them. It's just that we don't use a lot of them. These are bonsai clamps. These were used a lot when bonsai first started getting popular back in the 60s and 70s. Almost anyone who wanted to bend a branch used to use this, branch benders. But some people use it, but I'm not a great lover of that. But nevertheless, it's not what I like, it's what people like. And then the carving tools, there are all sorts of carving tools. I will show you these as well. So carving tools are used. There's another tool which many people do not come across, and it is this one. I will show you how this is used. I bet you don't know what this tool is. This is also a branch bender. So it's a lever for bending the thing, but I will show you the use of this because that is quite a rare tool, but quite useful as well. And you may have seen me prune the elm, a great big elm that I have, just ordinary shears. But if you have a big tree and you want to do topiary work, so these shears are also a very useful tool to use. I have produced so many videos that you've got to just look through all the videos that I produced. There's one great big English elm that I use just by these shears. So don't sneeze at some of these ordinary garden tools because they can be adapted for bonsai. But we sell them because they have a direct use for bonsai. And in case some of you are wondering what these contraptions are, these come direct from Japan. I'm sure they're made in China now. These are what we call hose guides. So if you have to drag a long hose pipe around the nursery, this is another version of that. It's just a reel on a spindle, and when the hose pipe is pulled around, it doesn't scratch the edges of the plinths or whatever. So these are called hose guides. So if you have many hose pipes trailing around, this is a very useful thing to have. Now, before I do too much talking, let me do some action. I don't know whether to take you into our workshop or not, but I have here a convenient bunch of trees. And I promise you this is going to be subject of another video. Just this morning, this is what I normally encounter throughout the week. We may have 20 people bring trees for us. She's asked for them to be repotted. Although it's a bit late to repot, I can do it without cutting too much wood. But look at the state of the trees. This has not been pruned for the last 20 years. This is a Japanese 5-needle pine or Japanese white pine. This is a maple. Very, very pot bound. Such a big nibari in a small pot. And look at it, the tree should be this size, not like that. So this has not been pruned for 20 years. Now this Chinese elm has not been pruned for as long as that. Now this tree has got a very interesting history. I was quite touched when she told me about it. This lady purchased this tree in 1971, which is 51 years ago. Can you imagine? 1971 she purchased it, and she was told by the nursery doesn't exist anymore, it's Tokonoma Bonsai in Hertfordshire, and they told her that this tree was imported from Japan in 1951. So if you put all the ages together, if this lady has owned it for 51 years, and the tree must have been at least 30 years when it came into the country, so the tree must be at least 80 years old. A frightening thought, isn't it? This tree is 81 or more years old. There you go. So I'm going to do separate videos on restyling these trees, because this is the typical sort of trees people bring to me. But while I've got these trees here, let me just show you how some of these tools are used. So let's come close and have a look. This is just a basket and a sample of just some tools. Well, all my videos are done in a ad hoc fashion. There's no one take, no two takes. What you see is what you get. All right, now let's show you here. I know I should be displaying these tools on a black background, but nevertheless you can still see them. Let's look at the scissors first. Now the scissors, I have them in the black carbon steel or stainless steel. So for every design of tool, there are the two versions, black carbon steel or stainless steel. I prefer stainless steel because you don't have to keep cleaning them. Certainly don't have to keep cleaning them. So that is very handy to have. I hope I won't get the packaging mixed up, because they all have a particular code and design. I'm taking the trouble to show you all these different tools because there's a reason why they're made different. Okay, let's have a look at these now. You may think that they are all just ordinary scissors, but they are not. They all have a different action, and different people have different preferences as to what they prefer. Look at these long handled scissors for a start. Now this one has got this slightly curved handle like that, and this is straight. This is narrow, can go into a lot of the intricate branches. This is also narrow, but the action is slightly different. Different people have different preferences. And when you buy tools, it's always good if you can go to the shop and actually feel the tool, because what fits your fingers and what fits your hand may not be what fits another person's hand. We all have different size fingers, different size palms, so they all have a different feel when you hold it. Again, I don't like to be prejudiced. Although these are the common, this is called, by the way, the Satsuki shears, the slightly curved bit. I don't know why they're called Satsuki shears, maybe because the Satsuki growers use this a lot. So these are called Satsuki shears. This is very, very popular. And this is used for just general pruning. And you can see what I do. Very sharp. And for just ordinary work, you can do this. But the use of these long handled scissors is so that you can go into the structure. It can really help you to go right into the structure without getting your hand into the tree. So the long handled scissors are useful for that reason. There's also a smaller version. Now there's a smaller version. I don't want to take the packaging out. And by the way, all our tools have got our Heron's name on it, stamped on it. So they're specially made for Herons. And now this is a very dinky pair of scissors. And I find that ladies usually like the small ones. I think ladies prefer these very dainty things. So ladies love this design of scissors. They're all what we call twig shears. So you can talk, a lot about these different types of shears. And as I said, all of these shears come in the black carbon steel or the stainless steel. And the stainless steel is just slightly dearer. I will just go back to some of the pricing. We always talk about things going up in price, but this is one instance where the prices have plummeted. It's like computers. When the first computers came up, they were so expensive. Now they're quite cheap. It's like the phones as well. Some of them are quite cheap. These tools we buy from wholesalers, and they used to be much more than that. It was quite common to pay like that 89 or 90 pounds for stainless steel tool if you bought it, from a dealer. But because these were made directly for us from the factory, so instead of 89, the same tool we are selling for about 35. That is less than half of what people were paying for before. So it's not that they're inferior or anything, it's just that we're able to get a good price by ordering in bulk and buying direct from the manufacturer. So much for the price of tools. So to pay 90 pounds or even 100 pounds for some stainless steel tools is not unusual. It's like carpentry tools. You can pay the earth for some tools. Some of them are cheap, some of them are expensive. Usually, good tools cost a lot. Okay, let's look at how I would deal with this tree, with the scissors. Again, many of you will have seen when I do the YouTube videos, I like to use this scissors, which is almost like a root cutting shears. Usually when you have this long handle like that, wide handle, compared to this, people use this for cutting roots. By the way, if you're cutting roots with one pair of scissors, don't use it for pruning the twigs, because once you start cutting the roots, they get blunt easily. But if you use the twig cutting ones for cutting roots, you will blunt that very quickly. So keep each separate tool for a specific purpose. But as I said, I like to use this for pruning. So in a situation like that, rather than use the secateurs, this is very handy to use. So you can see I'm already doing a YouTube video on this lady's trees. So I'm just pruning it back. Some people are afraid to prune their trees. I don't know why they're afraid to prune their trees. They think it will hurt the trees. Not so. Can you imagine if you didn't prune your hair and left it for 20 years, you'll be looking like a caveman. And it would look completely out of shape and look ridiculous. So all these long shoots, we're just going to grab the ends and cut them off. Sorry about the planes, they're taking off into the east wind, so the planes are very, very noisy today. But as I always say, it reminds me that the world is getting back to normal, so I don't mind that. So I've also heard people say, oh, I can use ordinary hair cutting scissors or paper cutting scissors to do bonsai. The feel is completely different. If you try to do that and then use a pair of bonsai tools, bonsai scissors, the action is quite different. I can assure you, these tools are made for a specific purpose, and they've been designed for the job in hand. So it doesn't pay to be miserly and just get by with tools. I know that I've said at the start, a bad workman always blames his tools. But in bonsai, if you have good tools, it does help. You see, I brought that tree back to shape just with that scissors alone. Now, look at these branches here. These are two dead branches, completely dead branches. So I can't really cut it. I can cut the twigs, but no way can I cut that. This is where the next tool comes into use. The twig shears are the most important or useful tool in bonsai. But when it comes to cutting the branches, there are what we call branch cutters. Let me now show you the branch cutters. Now in branch cutters, a lot of people get confused about the different types of branch cutters there are. There is the straight concave branch cutter. When we say concave, many people think that it's just round. It's not. We call this first one the flat concave. Bear with me while I'm... So this one is what we call the flat concave. You see, it's completely flat. And then you have another tool called, I don't like to use this term, they call it the knob cutter. I don't like the term knob cutter for obvious reasons, but the technical term, the Japanese call it the wen cutter, W-E-N, wen. And that one is completely round. So that is what we call the wen cutter, or some people refer to it as the knob cutter. So it's different. The cutting blade is a different shape. And over the last few years, I would say the last 30 years or 20 years, I think it was the Japanese who invented this cutter called the hybrid cutter. Hybrid cutter is a combination of the wen cutter and the flat concave cutter. So I will just show you the detail of this tool. So they're packed so carefully that I can hardly get the tool out. And this is now one of my favorite tools because it does the job of the two tools together. It's the wen and the flat concave combined into one. So, and of course these different cutters, they come in different sizes. Some are big, some are small. Let me find a wen cutter. I have so many tools that I get completely lost myself. I found the hybrid cutter, so let's have a close look at all the three tools. So this is what we call a flat concave cutter, like that. And then the knob cutter or the wen cutter. And when they combine the two designs, they got what is called a hybrid cutter, which is like a parrot beak. So it is like that, but it's also rounded. So that does the work of the two tools. Very useful tool, the hybrid cutter. So that's the hybrid cutter. And of course, they come in different lengths. Some are 180 millimeter long. This one is 200 millimeter long. And then at the other extreme, if you work on very big trees, we have tools which are as big as this. Much, much bigger for big trees. I use these big tools a lot. So these, see, even this tool is now 69. When we used to buy direct from Japan, we used to have to charge 120 for these tools. So these prices are now half of what the Japanese tools used to be. And just because they are made in China. So much for the cutters. So I was talking to you about the cutters. So let's show you how to use these cutters. Supposing I want to prune this branch off, which is a dead branch, I could either use this one, the flat concave cutter, to cut that. Whenever you cut something, don't try and cut it close straight away. Do it in two goes or have two bites at the cherry. Elm wood is very hard. Okay, so you can nibble away closely and then get down to the, what you call it, bottom of it. Now, this is the ordinary branch cutter. You could use the hybrid cutter as well. You could use hybrid cutter to do that. Again, we won't go close straight away. We will do it in bits. And then when we get to the base, then we got that. Now you must be wondering, what is the wen cutter or the knob cutter used for? Now this cutter helps you to get even closer, and it gouges into the wood, so it forms a concave hole, and when the bark heals over, it heals smooth. So that is what the wen cutter is used for. So the wen cutter is very useful to do that. See how sharp they are, literally like razors, razor sharp. So there you are. You can use the wen cutter also for cutting branches. I've seen some other demonstrators use only the branch cutters and never use secateurs like I use. But as I say, there's no right and a wrong way. Whatever you find is convenient, do that. But certainly for cutting branches, the branch cutter has a specific use, very specific use. So there you go. You see how I've tidied the tree up, and this will be repotted. I'm not going to cut the roots, I'm just going to put it in a bigger pot. So this is how you use the branch cutters, and I've showed you how to use the scissors. And as I say, there are big versions of that. You must, yeah, this is a big version of the Wen cutter or the knob cutter. See the size of it, huge, massive. I'm not going to take it out, I will have to put it back. So these are these large Wen cutters. So they are large versions of all the tools. Another very useful tool is what we call the branch splitter. You have seen me use the branch splitter and talk about the branch splitter. This of course is a huge branch splitter, look at that. You get it in 200 millimeter, but this I think is 280 millimeter. So this is huge, absolutely huge. And again, you've seen me work on this. Now let me just tidy up. This is this type of Mugo pine. I don't know what variety it is. Not one of the ones that creep on the ground, but one of the tall growing ones. And the branch splitter, by its very name, means that you use it for splitting a branch. And it is one of my most useful tools. The most useful tool is the twig shears, then the branch cutter, and then the the branch splitter. The branch splitter allows you to, if you want to bend a thick trunk, impossible to bend, you split the trunk so that you make two thinner slivers of a thick branch. So one single thick piece is hard to bend, but if you have two thin pieces, it's easier to bend. So that is the logic behind using the branch splitter. So you let the two blades meet together, pierce the wood like that, and you go all the way up the trunk. In fact, I came across a tree or a couple of trees where I had done branch splitting last year, and they've completely healed over. A lot of people think they don't heal, but when they heal, it makes a lovely callus and makes the trunk look really gnarled and old. So it doesn't disfigure the tree. In fact, it enhances the tree. So the theory behind branch splitting is that you use the branch splitter to split a thick branch into two thinner pieces, which makes it easier to bend, and it can slide over each other. So sometimes you take it all the way up the trunk, and if the trunk sometimes is thicker than this, you can make not just one cut, but two or more cuts to get several thin pieces. So once you've got several thin pieces, then this becomes easier to bend. Can you see already I can bend that like that without breaking? So that is the use of the branch splitter. And then we are talking of the branch bender. This tool, very few people know how to use, but this tool has a use for doing this. So it is used like this. Okay, like that. So can you see? It's just like a lever. So can you see? John Naka used to be very fond of using the branch splitter. So they bend it like that. So it's just a lever. So like a car tire lever, you use this. So this is how you use the lever for bending. I don't often use it, but a lot of people swear by this tool. It is such a useful tool to have. Branch, it's improvised, of course, but it's now specially made for bending a branch. I think in America people are very fond of using it because John Naka promoted this tool a lot. So I could go on and on. Okay, then the wire cutter. Many people think that the wire cutter, they can use ordinary electrical pliers or something to cut the wire. But the action is completely different. You know, the proper bonsai wire cutter, you cannot replace it. It is such a useful tool. And some of these wire cutters you can cut. Like this may be a small wire cutter. We've got big wire cutters too. You can cut really thick wire. You can cut up to like 8-10 millimeter wire. Let me just show you as an example. Let's come and find a really thick piece of wire. And copper wire, of course, is even harder to bend. Now this is, I think, 8 millimeter wire. See how thick it is, almost thick as a pencil. And I've not tried it before. I can assure you this cuts like butter. Literally cuts through like butter. It is so powerful, these tools. Not only is it useful for cutting wire to get the correct length, if you have a wire on a tree, it is very easy to use it for cutting existing wire that you don't want to unwire. Supposing a tree has been wired and you don't want to unwire it. This is not a good example, like this. So you go into the tree like that and cut that off. Save you see, you cut that off, then it saves you unwiring the tree. So you just go around like that and cut it all off. So that is a very useful tool to have, and it does both jobs. That means both for cutting lengths of wire to the correct length, or cutting bits of wire which has already been wrapped around the trunk. So this is the use of the branch splitter, and again it comes in another size. This is the small size, 180 mil. You get wire cutters are that big for really big jobs. I suppose copper wire and all that they're used. So I hope I've gone through most of the tools. I can keep talking on and on. I won't talk about carving tools because there are about 20 different designs of carving tools. You see this is like a gouge for scraping. You may have seen a lot of bonsai artists use that. Like that, they carve, grooves of wood into the trunk like that. So that is the use for it. You carve into to make grooves and jins and sharis with this. So these are the tools. So I hope I've spoken enough about tools. Just to give a plug to our own tools, because we now have our own Herons branded tools, and it gives you some insight as to how you can use the different tools for the different purposes. So although I said a bad workman blames his tools, it does help to have good tools. Good tools certainly help make the job easier. So I hope you've enjoyed this little episode about bonsai tools. There you go.